Nope.
Hey, Granny, where's your cell phone?
I turned it off.
Good. Okay, bye.
Okay.
Hi, Roseanne.
Hi, Sean. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited because today my guest is somebody that I've wanted to talk to on the internet for, how long have I known you, Sean? About 100 years or longer. And I'm so happy that we finally hooked up, that I can have you on as a guest. Sean is the most brilliant man I've ever talked to, as far as putting things together, piecing things together, history, politics. And he is a person after my own heart because we agree on so much. And a lot of you know him. And I think he's extra dimensional. And I'm happy to have you, Sean. Sean Hross, Dr. Sean Hross.
Yeah, fine. We finally made it, Roseanne. It's here. It's 11 o'clock in the evening, 11 p.m., 2300 hours here in France. And so we got 12 hours difference. I suppose it's 11 o'clock in the morning where you are.
Yes, it's 11 a.m.
Yeah. And well, Roseanne knows me from my YouTube videos.
Yes.
And like my film, The Swiss Beast, Home of the Devil, or actually the video series, it's in 3 parts. And my YouTube channel's Gure, but that has been taken off by YouTube.
And
yeah, Gatsefrats is still there. Maybe Jay can put it in the description afterwards.
Yeah, we will.
And yeah, and I've got Central Intelligence Agency left with an icon showing cocaine imports agency, because that's what they do basically. When they say they are going after the drug dealers, they're just taking out the competition. That's all what they do. And they're probably the biggest drug dealers around. And the CIA, actually, they belong to Switzerland. It's all Octagon.
The first thing I saw of yours was Pharaoh Show.
Yeah, that was my first video. I made it like 15 years ago, and I put it like 10 years ago on YouTube. And I'm showing in that video a lot of secret symbols. Because here in the Middle Ages, when the pharaohs, when they came to Europe, and this is why we don't have any castles from before the year 1000 in Europe. So where do these guys come from? And they were the ones who have always been ruling. It's not the Jewish people, as so many people say. It's neither the Zionists, which is just a tiny local problem in the Middle East. I mean, it doesn't touch us, in other parts of the world. And so where do they come from? And so in the beginning, they were in these castles in Europe. And later on, they had so much offspring, sons and cousins and daughters and grandsons, and they were not living in the castle anymore. They were living in houses. And so in the Middle Ages, there were no pens and no paper. There was no internet. There were no cell phones, no phones at all. So how do you communicate? So the only thing durable in the Middle Ages in those days was stone. So they carved secret symbols in stone on the front of their houses. We showed in my video the Swiss Beast, the Pharaoh Show. Pharaoh Show. And it was on my channel Gure, so I hope it's still there somewhere, or maybe on my channel Gatsefrats. And these secret symbols, that meant if there was a feudal lord, a pharaoh, on his horse with a big army passing that house, it meant, well, don't kill the people in that house, and don't destroy the house. You can rape all the European women around. It doesn't matter. And this film Roseanne just talked about, it's basically about this, showing a lot of secret symbols.
So I want to relate it to the whole Q movement that's big in the US and I guess all over the world, because they say their symbolism will bring them down, but yet they don't seem to point to the right symbols. And they do point to, well, sometimes they do, but they never discuss anything about the pharaohs and the founding of Switzerland in 1291, and they never talk about the banks and the banking system. They talk about other parts, but they leave out that very important part. And a lot of them do blame Jews. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, there is a British Royal Institute which is called Tavistock, and it's an institute of social engineering. So they have analyzed us. They know us better than we the people, we know ourselves. And they know exactly how we think. They know exactly how we're going to react. And they make the program actually for the entire world. Like this Black Lives Matter movement. It's all being made by Tavistock, the Royals Tavistock. And probably because there was too much talk about Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein and the raping by royals of women and children. So it needed the people and the world to stop talking about the royals. So then they came with this Black Lives Matter movement, and they came with Corona and all these other things. And there are basically the laws of silence, the omerta, like the Italian mafia, they call it omerta. The laws of silence around Switzerland. Nobody, no media, not the lamestream media, nobody in the world, no politician, nobody will ever talk about Switzerland or do anything about Switzerland. And
because
this is
it's
the reason
neutral. Because it's neutral, right?
Yeah, it's they're not really neutral. I mean, if you see, I found a really rare picture of Mr. Hitler when he was in Adolf Hitler, when he was in Zurich in 1923. And I put it in my film, The Swiss Beast, or in my video series, The Swiss Beast, Home of the Devil, in 3 parts. And in Zurich in 1923, Hitler, he got financed by a Swiss general called Ulrich Wille Jr., who was, his mom was from the German high aristocracy von Bismarck. So, as I just told you, the aristocracy, they come out of Pharaoh. And, and Switzerland is their main base. So when they came the first time to Europe, I mean, already in the 3rd century, there was a Roman butcherer, a Roman general. His name was called Saint Maurice. And he came from Upper Egypt. He was really an Egyptian, actually. And so it has been laid down, it has been written down, and it is a historical fact that these pharaohs, at least since Saint Maurice, who was of pharaonic descent, a Roman general, he was already in Switzerland in the 3rd century, and they still honor him. There's a monastery and everything of this guy, Saint Maurice. So Switzerland never was really neutral. And when these pharaohs, when they came in Europe, they said in the middle of Europe, quite central and strategically, tactically, they said, this is our neutral base in the middle of Europe. And we're never going to make any war. It's always going to stay neutral because we're going to hide everything in there. All our treasures, I mean, Hitler's gold, the Nazi gold, which was stolen of the Jews, the Knights Templars treasure and other pharaonic treasures, it all came into Switzerland. And this is also why all the NGOs in the world, the Red Cross, the United Nations, the UEFA, FIFA for the soccer, with this highly corrupt set blatter, the Swiss corrupt managing director of the World Soccer Organization, the FIFA and the UEFA, the Olympic Games in Lausanne, the OMS for the doctors, everything is in Switzerland. And this is also why they put 4 different peoples in Switzerland. So the German-speaking ones in the north, so they can do their crimes against Germany. Then there are the French-speaking Swiss, so they can do their crimes towards the west, towards France. They got in the Tessin, they are the Italian-speaking Swiss. They can do their crimes towards Italy and the south. You know, like Mussolini, he spent 2 years in Switzerland before he became Il Duce, which means in English, the Duke. And Hitler, he was in Switzerland, so, you know, that's why the Nazis. And then there is a 4th language, which is called Retro-Romanic. I mean, how can you put spontaneously Germans and French and Italians all together? You know, these are peoples who don't really love each other. So there must be an exterior force who put them together. And this is Pharaoh. Switzerland is the base of Pharaoh.
Well, why did they hate Jews so much? You know, I'm a Jew, so that's why I'm interested in all that. That's what interested me from the beginning of watching all your videos, because it answered questions for me of why does anti-Semitism exist and why is it so virulent and why does it last for so many centuries?
Yeah, good question, Roseanne. And first of all, I'm not Jewish, not by blood, and neither by religion. I have no religion at all. I'm a South African from French origins who were 350 years ago. My ancestors were Huguenots, Protestants, and dissident aristocracy who were persecuted in France. And first of all, in Germany, considering the hatred towards the Jews and the Nazis, in Germany there never has been anti-Semitism and anti-Jewishness at all. And this is why, I mean, before the Nazis, there were never any pogroms. And this is why the Jewish language in Europe, it became Yiddish. And Yiddish is a southern German language with some Hebrew keywords in it. But if you speak German, you can understand most of the Yiddish. Mm-hmm. And they had to choose this language or another language because apparently, as you all know, Hebrew is only to speak in front of the God and in a temple and by the rabbis and not by the people. It was not supposed to. It's a holy language, apparently, as far as I know about this. So the reason for hating the Jews is, first of all, the Knights Templars. Because the Knights Templars already did a huge massacre on Jews in Jerusalem in 1099. Right. There were witness accounts that still exist, that has been written down, that the Crusaders, they were walking until their knees in the blood. And they butchered everybody because everybody looked the same in those days. They're all wearing the same jalaba, the same like almost a dress like, which is being worn in Muslim countries in the Middle East. Right. So they butchered everybody, Christians, Muslims, Jews, the whole lot. And So here you can already see that the Knights Templars, they already hated the Jews, and which goes even further back. But as I'm answering Roseanne's question here first, I'll go to that later on. And so the Nazis, actually, they were the Nazi Templars. If you look at the Iron Cross, like the Nazis were hanging, it was hanging around their neck.
Mm-hmm.
It is a Templar's cross. And the whole National Socialism by the Germans, it started as a movement by the people against the elite, against as they saw it, the Freemasons, and against the aristocracy. And the German people, they were in a very bad state after the First World War. There was a very heavy economical crisis, and the children were even dying. So they said by themselves, we're going to think national, we're going to help and think, for themselves, and social. And we're going to help each other. And it wasn't that bad. They're not really against Jews, and not at all in the beginning. But then when Mr. Hitler, he took over the power in of the National Socialist movement, when he became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933, a year later, in 1934, he murdered all the original German National Socialists, who were actually by the people. It was a workers' party against the elite. Just like the communists in Russia, there was a workers' party against the elite. So in Russia, we had international socialism, and in Germany, we had national socialism, and it's basically the same thing. But it has all been taken over by Pharaoh, by the elite, by the Erev Rav. And after 1934, and when Hitler, he had all the original national socialist leaders from the German Workers' Party by the people, he had them all executed. Thousands of people. He just murdered them. And he replaced them all by the elite. They all had the prefix von, which is an aristocratic prefix, like von Stauffenberg, von Manstein, and everything. And then it became Nazism. So there were no more workers, there were no more German workers in it anymore. They were all doctors and engineers and lawyers and all that type of people. And then it became an organization, even against the German people. 1 million Germans who were no Jews ended up dead in the concentration camps. And they were actually the first, because before they sent the Jews in the extermination camps, there were the concentration camps from 1934, I think, yeah. The first one was Dachau, and there were no Jews in it at all in the beginning. And there were only German dissidents, as they said, and the Nazis murdered 1 million non-Jewish Germans. And so we really have to differentiate here two types of Nazism. The Nazism of the poor, like the workers, or as we see today, little neo-Nazis, and the Nazism of the rich. And little neo-Nazis, we can easily detect them. They got their heads shaven, and they lift their arms like in a Heil Hitler salute, and they're very noisy and all that, and they scream and they shout and all that. But the Nazism of the rich, we don't see them. It's like the German industrialists, before the war, and the Swiss industrialists, most of all, financing the Nazis or the little neo-Nazis for their own behalf, to mobilize little European misled, little frustrated neo-Nazis who also have their reasons. I mean, we all have our reasons. They see Europe like going to hell. It's losing European and white identity for them, and they're not happy. So what I do, I talk to them, and instead of saying, "Oh, you damn Nazi," and actually I've got all the right, I'm entitled to say so, because I also lost my grandfather because of those Nazis in 1942. He was an officer in the British Navy intelligence, and he died in 1942. And so I don't really like the Nazis. But if you look at it, the Nazism of the rich, what is the worst thing you can do to them? Well, that is taking their little Nazism of the poor away from them, their little soldiers, so they can't use them anymore. So I just turn them around like in a chess game, and so they won't hurt us anymore in the future, and they will bite their own masters. And I'll explain them that the real enemy within, and the enemy of the German people and of the Europe, of the white race, as they want to hear it, is not the Jewish people, but is Pharaoh and the Knights Templars. And I give all the proofs in my videos. So this is far worse for the Nazism of the rich, that they lose their little Nazi soldiers, which they can't use anymore afterwards. So dear people, we must talk to those little Nazis so they won't kill our children anymore. You see, this is very important. We must try to understand them and talk to them like a good father. With this, we will achieve far much more than like swearing at them like the Antifa does, which is it's counterproductive, I have changed thousands of little neo-Nazis, thousands of them, and I changed them with love and respect, because I really felt sorry for them, that they are misled by the real enemy within. So, and if you look at those, in 1918, and so many little German children who hadn't any more fathers from the First World War, so they didn't have a father being able to tell them, well, listen, my son, life is about this, it's about this, and you have to be careful for this. And the tradition, father-son tradition, was broken. And this is what the evil ones, what Pharaoh wants to do, I mean, the best way to make a dog out of a wolf, is to kill the father-mother wolf, and you raise the little wolf as a dog, or as a hound, or a police dog, or whatever. I mean, this is how you can recreate mankind and man new from scratch, not anymore after the image of God, but after the image of the devil. So the Holocaust and the Shoah, you can't possibly understand it without looking at the First World War, because the First World War was the beginning of the Shoah, because all these little German kids, millions of them, who didn't have any father, they were an easy prey for the Swiss Nazi Templars, who put them in the Hitler Youth, the Hitler Jugend, and these little children, they were just a defenseless prey. They had no chance at all. They could make out of them as they wanted. And in 1940, when these little German children, these 4-year German children, when they were in their 20s, or in their 18 or 19, well, they were the perfect butchers, the perfect warriors. And I mean, for our grandfathers, our grandparents, your Jewish grandparents, and my South African grandfather, who died in 1942 because of the Nazis, we should hate the Germans because of what they did. But for our children and our grandchildren, we must try to understand what they did to the Germans, and how they manipulated little German children who had no chance at all. We have to go on with it, you know, and we have to understand what happened. We all suffered. The Germans suffered, the English suffered, the Americans suffered, the Jews suffered. I suffered because in my family, we're already in the 4th generation of Nazi terror. So my grandfather, he died in 1942 because of those damn Nazis. My father, he was really traumatized because he lost his father when he was like 6 years old. And I think all his life he was traumatized because of this. I was terrorized by the Swiss Nazi Templars living in Switzerland for more than 20 years. They even tortured me in a torture detention center for 5.5 years, only for making videos for political prisoners. They got a lot of political prisoners in Switzerland. And my children, my 4 children in Switzerland, they also got terribly terrorized. I remember the last time they arrested me with an anti-terrorist squad. No, the before last time. My daughter, she was only 3 years old, and she was crying her heart out, you know, with all these anti-terrorist squad, you know, like putting me against the wall only for making videos, and I couldn't even comfort her. They were really aggressive, and they were hoping I would swear and like fight back or something, you know. Then they could apply some more Swiss Nazi laws on me and my family. So finally, I had to leave Switzerland, and I've been homeless since 5 years. So I finally can do this interview because I got invited by a grandmother here, an old lady who took me hitchhiking. As I find it very hard to rent something here in France because they ask for a 3 months guarantee and 3 wages, and I don't have any wages. And my personality, my ID card integrated into the system and everything, so I can't possibly rent something. So, but I'm very glad I can finally do this interview with my friend Roseanne here. And this is what we really have in common. Roseanne and me, we want to destroy this horrible enemy within, who had the Jewish people suffer that much, and they are the pharaohs, and who had me suffer that much as well. So this is what we have in common, and we are combining forces, Roseanne and me, which I appreciate very much of my sister Roseanne. And another reason for the hatred against the Jews is that the Knights Templars, or the Nazi Templars, they come out of the pharaohs, which I'll explain later, and I'll give you all the proofs. And as the Jewish people, they were already 430 years prisoner with the pharaohs. And the moment, what is that noise?
Oh, it's a
and
car.
The moment, oh right, okay. And the moment the Exodus took place, and the Jewish slaves, they left Pharaoh, and Pharaoh, all of a sudden, he found himself without any more slaves. And so Pharaoh found themselves, you know, all of a sudden without any more slaves. So he had to do the labor himself. So he felt really betrayed by the Hebrews and by the Jews. And this is the main reason that Pharaoh still has this hatred towards the Jews. There are some other reasons, because the pharaohs, they mixed a lot with the Hebrew people, raping the women and having the man work until death, you know, building the pyramids, and they raped the women. So there's a lot of superior blood into the Jewish people, which comes from Pharaoh, and they are absolutely superior to any people in the world. And this superior genetics we can find in many Jews. I mean, we can see that Roseanne, she's very intelligent, and she's got an incredible sense of humor. And this intelligence, I mean, it's not just coming from some nomad tribe in the desert with a lot of camels and goats, right? It's from Pharaoh. So Pharaoh really felt betrayed by the Hebrews, and this hatred still continues until this very day. And as the Knights Templars and the Nazi Templars, they come out of Pharaoh, which I explain later. This is one of the reasons for murdering, genociding the Jewish people. Another reason is there were 3 million Jewish people in Poland before the war. And, you know, Jewish people, they like to stick around each other and to preserve their identity. I mean, I've got no problem with it. I mean, okay, you just do what you want, you know, why not? I mean, I understand it. You want to preserve your identity. But the problem is they were not paying any more taxes, you know, in Poland. And they were not, who were collecting the taxes in those days? Well, it was the aristocracy of Pharaoh, who come from Pharaoh, which I explain later. So the Jews in Poland, they were having a civilization within the Polish civilization of Pharaoh's aristocracy in Poland. And even many Poles were taking it over. They said, well, I mean, we can do as the Jews. We're not going to pay any more taxes either. And we're going to, you know, we're going to exchange goods. You know, there was a Jewish guy who was a butcher, another guy was a baker. I mean, why pay taxes to Pharaoh? And let's just exchange food, and we're not going to pay anything. And so the moment you don't pay any more taxes to Pharaoh and the aristocracy, well, you're dead. And this is what happened. And Pharaoh's aristocracy in Poland before the war, they were very afraid this was going to expand. And this, here we also come to the myth, not entirely myth, about the Jewish communists. Well, actually, the Bolshevists, I think there were only 7 main Jewish leaders, and they all got murdered by Stalin in 1934. And that was the end of the myth of Jewish Bolshevists. And the name Bolshevist, it's the same actually as the National Socialists in Germany. It was a workers' movement. And the name Bolsheviki in Russian, if I translate it into English, it means the majority. And who is the majority? The workers are the majority, the people. Just like now on the internet, people say, we are the majority, let's stand up, you know, let's get rid of this enemy within who are ruining our lives or killing our children, etc. And the same thing happened in Russia. And yes, there were many Jews, but they all got murdered in 1934. So communism is not Jewish, because communism can be like prepared to Nazism. This is what became out of the Bolshevist movement. And yeah, they all got murdered. And here also lies.
Well, first of all, I want to say, don't forget that if you take it back, largely the first victims or targeted group of the, should we just say elites, or should we say, what do you want to call them? Rulers, the people who own the world. In Europe were the women of Europe, who were property owners, widows largely. And they, you know, that was the witch burning craze that lasted 300 years. And where women were accused of, especially women property owners, were accused of witchcraft when largely they were midwives and, you know, healers, and they were burned at the stake, you know, by those same people, and their property was assumed by the people who own the world. So I think that it's all kind of tied into, you know, they go wherever the money is and target the population where that money is and take it. It's not that complicated. That's what I think.
Yeah, I will explain you the reason why they burned the women actually. And first of all, coming back to your question like before, um, why didn't the Nazis just kill only the man, the Jewish man? The reason is that the Jewish women, they stayed faithful to their man, so they had to kill everybody. Whereas the European women, the white women, they are not at all faithful to their man. They made an alliance with Pharaoh. Because in the Middle Ages, there was this law which is called the Jus Primae Noctis. Jus, it means the law of the first night. So as a European, on the first night of your marriage, the lord of the castle, he had the first right to take that woman before her man, before she could sleep with her man. This was the law of the first night. So, you know,
Because they
many
were
women
trying
are,
to impregnate her with their, you know, ruler seed, right? Because so then she could have uh, a bloodline baby, right?
oh, that as well, yeah. But then it was not enough just to make a child with a European like Untermensch, as the Nazis said, or a subhuman, because the pharaohs, they see us all as subhumans,
Mhm.
both Jews as Westerners as white people.
Well,
And
they see the
so
Arab people as that too, right? They see the Arab people as subhuman as well.
yes, of course, there we have the Arab aristocracy, like the Caliph, the Emir, the Caliphate, the Sultan, the Sheikh, and all that. They're all cousins with the European aristocracy, like a Duke and a Count and all that. And they made an alliance, you know, during the Crusades, and having the Arabs and the European people fight each other, while
Right.
they got away with the Templars' treasure and hid it in Switzerland, only 2.5 months after the end of the Crusades. But first, I want to come back to your question, which I haven't answered yet,
Okay.
about European women. So these women, they got raped in the castle, and you know, many women are quite, or the European women at least, are quite pragmatic. You know, so many women, they got raped and they said, "Oh, well, this horrible man, he raped me and I hate him." You know, so Pharaoh and the aristocracy, they couldn't do anything with his women. They couldn't build up this alliance against the man. So they burned these women at the stakes. These women who stayed uh, faithful to the European man, to their man, just as the Jewish women uh, during the Second World War and before, they stayed faithful to their man, so they had to get burned as well. They both got burned. All the faithful women, they got burned. So these women who were more pragmatic, who didn't hate these pharaohs that much, and they thought, well, okay, well, it was a rape, but well, okay, after all, it was a prince or a duke, and he had good manners, not like my European peasant man, you know, smelling like pig shit the whole day and swearing and burping and all that, you know. You can see the picture, right? And so, and she said to herself, well, I had a good meal, I had a nice glass of wine, he treated me like a princess for, you know, for the evening. Had a good bath, and well, don't you think these two made an alliance, you know? And she just said to herself, well, okay, in the beginning it was hard, you know, this guy raped me, but okay, afterwards it went quite smooth, and yeah, I enjoyed it, you know. And so the European women, most of them, the ones who didn't get burned, the good women, they got burned. And I mean, look around. I mean, there are not so many good women around, I think. Western women, you know. I mean, if you see, you know, if there's a divorce, if you're a man, you can't see your children anymore and all that, you know. The women are claiming that they are, you know, a victim of male violence. I mean, but look at the world wars. I mean, who died in all those world wars? It was the man died. And this is because Pharaoh and the aristocracy, they made an alliance with the white Western women, with most of them. And this is actually the essence of the story of Adam and Eve. You know, look at Pharaoh. He has this snake. You know, if you look at the mask of Tutankhamun, King Tut,
Yeah.
he has a snake on his head. So the snake, Pharaoh, and the European aristocracy who come from Pharaoh, they were talking to Eve and to the women and telling, listen, we're going to kill the man, you know, and so there won't be any more father-son tradition. And you women, you can raise your sons not anymore after the image of God, but after the image of the devil. And this is actually the story of Isis and Osiris. And this is very important to know. And this is why the Freemasons, who come out of the Knights Templars, because the Knights Templars were, and they still are, a military order. So they needed a political wing to consolidate the power under peace times. So they founded the Freemasons, who are everywhere in key positions. And every president in the world, including Mr. Trump, they are all Freemasons. This is why Mr. Trump is always sitting like this, you know. He's always sitting like this. It's all Freemasonry. He's showing it to all his Freemason pals. And I made a video about it, about Mr. Trump's genealogy. And he's from a line of Scandinavian kings. It's all there. It's in one of my channels. So, where was I? I forgot about it.
You were talking about, you're kind of talking about the artificial intelligence that's been bred into all of us, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember. So, yeah, Osiris and Isis. Isis, she was the wife of Osiris. And Isis, she was pregnant with their son, Horus. Horus of the all-seeing eye. And then the devil came, Seth, or Set-on, Satan. This is Satan. Yeah. And Seth, or Set-on, he is the lord of the underworld of the pharaohs. Wait a minute, I'm a bit, it's getting warm. Be careful, people, I'm getting warmed up, eh?
Yeah.
You better hide now. Yeah, so she was pregnant with Horus. And then Seth came, or Satan, Set-on, and he came down. Hello, Isis. I have a good idea. If we kill your husband, Osiris, then there won't be any more father-to-son tradition. And you can raise your son as you want. And you can make an obedient slave out of him, or a policeman. He will always obey to you. So Isis, she said, oh, no, he's my husband. Go away, you dirty maniac. Leave me alone. So Seth, he flew away. This is the original story, your Pharaoh. It's very important because we are living it through all these wars. I call it the Horus matrix, killing the man and, you know, shaping their boys new. Just as they did with all those fatherless little German boys, 4-year-olds.
So you're saying, wait a minute. So you're saying that women are colluding in destroying what you consider to be the most important relationship, which is the father to son. That's what you're saying,
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Most Western women, they do. And the good women, they are afraid. They don't talk about it because they know what's going to happen. Because there is a tradition from mother to daughter. I met some women who told me this as well. I told them this and they said, yes, you're right. You know, but don't tell anybody because this is dangerous. And this is why so many European women, they collaborated with the Nazis killing the Jews. And so then Isis and
They
Osiris
say it
later
was
on.
the German. They say it was the German women who brought Hitler to power, and they would faint in the street when he would, like 10 times a rock star. And they were just enamored of him so much because he was their. They thought he was the pinnacle of masculinity at the time. But yet, when we look back, he was kind of not all that masculine at all. He was
I
very
know.
feminine, I think. You're basically the only person I've ever heard, uh, who espouses these views, which I find you interesting because you're a independent thinker. And as I listen to you, it makes me connect a lot of things because I really feel like most people they don't know what in the hell they're doing, and they don't know why in the hell they're doing it either. But it seems like to me that the only way to make it in a world run by this big club, as George Carlin says, this big club that it's a big club and you ain't in it. You and me, we ain't in it. Um, the only way to make it in that club is to hate yourself so bad that you actually hate everyone like you and volunteer to, step up to help destroy everyone like you. That's how you get promoted. Do you
Yeah,
understand what I mean? Like
yeah,
to
yeah.
collude in your own destruction and not even know that you're doing it. Such incredible lemming programming that you would go out and like help destroy your own neighborhood in the name of setting your people free. How do you do that? That's heavy duty mind control, and isn't it?
Yeah. I
So that's
must
really
say,
what you're
considering,
talking about when you say the Western women have colluded in their own self defeat, and I find that very interesting to think about.
yeah, I mean, we can relate it to the Nazi period. I mean, there were so many Western or and German women and Western women who who said to their man, "Oh, I'm so afraid of them Jews. Go and kill them. Go and kill them for me." Just like in all those wars. The French women in the First War telling probably to their men, "Oh, we're so afraid of the Germans. Go kill them." And the German women telling the same to their German men, "Oh, we're afraid of the French. Go kill them." I mean, a bad woman, how does she kill two men? Because she's not strong enough. Well, she let them fight each other. I mean, it's quite easy. So millions of men died. I mean, if you look at the Battle of Verdun, 1 million people died. And when we talk about the Shoah and the Jewish genocide, but I mean, this was also a genocide. Only the Battle of Verdun, 1 million people died, man. So I mean, you'd say the general, he never went to military school or something. How can you lose 1 million people in a couple of months' time? You'd say, well, after 10,000 dead, well, let's try another strategy and think it over. Yeah, but they went on. Well, it was meant to be because we are a bred race. We are a farmed race. And this is why you have to do a intelligence test when you go into the army. Not that you become an officer or general, because that's only for the elite and Pharaoh's aristocracy. No, you will never become that. It's
Right.
only so they know that they can send the most intelligent man in the front rows so they die and they never come back. So they keep an obedient slave race. This is why so millions of men died in all these wars. And the women, they collaborated with us. They should have stopped the man and said, don't go into the war. I'm going to hide you. We're going to dig a hole in the earth. You're going to stay at home, homie. You have to work for me here. You stay at home with the kids. But it never happened. They all
That's what
collaborated
that's
with it.
what I'm all for. After my study of history and all that and women's role and everything that I think it has come, and it seems to, after everything is always destroyed, that it begins again at ground level with the women, particularly the grandmothers. And I think we're at that point. And it's also like that it is us who need to empower the men, and they need to be empowered to protect us. And how that was ever taken out of female DNA and genetic memory is very shocking to me, especially nowadays. It's just shocking to me.
There is a war against the patriarchy. And this is the third reason, or the fourth, I don't remember. The other reasons I already told you. Another reason, the Jews, before the war, they were very patriarchal. Just like the Orthodox Jews today, like in Israel and anywhere in the world, they are patriarchal. Not in the sense that they are, ruling over the women, not at all. But it says so in the Torah and in the Bible. The patriarch, he's the head of the family. It has to be like this. We are created.
Well,
like
it is, that's not entirely true. But I can see, being a man, that you would see it that way, and I'm not going to argue with you on that. But it is I think we need to get new words, Sean, because when you talk about patriarchy, everybody hears it as it's a corruption. It's all a corruption. We need new words, because when we hear patriarchy, we hear a perverted system run by perverts. That's what I hear when I hear patriarchy. I can't stomach it. And when I hear the word matriarchy, I can't stomach that either, because that's just a conclusionary sellout to perverts. So I think we need new words where it's like, can we say something more child-centered, something that cares about children more than either of these ocracies, something that's child-centered and child-loving, because we've never had that.
I'll give you the word. Complementary. Okay. A man and a woman are and a woman are complementary. We are different, and it's good like this. We are different physically. We are different mentally. A woman is a little bird who needs a nest because she has to feed the children. She needs warmth. And a man, he has to defend the nest. He's like, he sees a danger. Not the man of today anymore. They don't see any more danger. There are no more men after all these words. But a man and a woman are complementary. This is how I see it. And this is also like in the so-called patriarchal system. They are complementary. Of course they are. But the evil ones, they call it a patriarchy, But I suppose...
But the grandmother-centered culture, which is what Judaism is, and every tribal culture is as well. The grandmother's the one who spins the stories about the past and the myth, and tells the stories that make the culture adherent for the children, and that's where all notions of war and protection and all that come from. They all grow out of that, I think. So the corrupted stories that grandmothers tell because they've been corrupted, I think that's my target, and I think we need new stories that make everybody do what they were put here to do, which none of us have done for centuries, which is protect the culture, the hearth, the home, specifically, so that we can go on as a human race and raise children who are, able to adapt to the environment around them. We haven't done that for centuries, except for the fact that they control people and reward them when they serve their masters in the most docile way possible.
Yes, I know we disagree upon that, and I think it's a great thing that
we disagree on a lot, but I still like to talk to you.
And it's a good thing we have this in common, that we both hate those Nazi Templars and what they did, and these pharaohs. And with this in common,
I hate evil people who know that they're doing evil. I think a lot of people have no idea that they're doing evil. And so I think they should be apprised of that and given the choice to choose not to do it. But when they mindlessly do it, I just kind of pray for their souls rather than hate them. But I hate people who know they're doing evil things and continue to do it, and who have the power not to do it.
So do I. So coming back to the pharaohs, yeah, so I wanted to say, so I think it's a great thing that we two here, we accept that from each other, and we have different opinions and still be friends. And we have this strong thing in common, that we hate these Nazi Templars. And I think that's fantastic. I mean, yeah,
well, we hate the idea that infests them. I don't know if we can hate any human, really, but then I don't know if everybody's human either. But this idea that infests and animates them, I don't even know if it's human. And I like when you talk about, that there is a real, can we call it a virus or a bacteria that infests people's minds? And it is a religion, I guess, but it's like, it really is a worship of the devil or everything horrible, of pure power for and hatred and suffering. And they worship that. They worship power, just absolute power. And it's satanic.
Yeah. So coming back to your first question, and why the Nazis hated the Jews, and why today Nazis still hate Jews. First of all, I think some Palestinians, they brought this disinformation in the world, that the word Nazi, it comes from two words, National Zionism, which is completely wrong, of course. They are trying to manipulate the rest of the world, so the rest of the world are going to solve their own problems, for which they don't have the balls to solve it themselves. So actually the word Nazi, it comes from the Italian nazionalismo, from Mussolini. And Mussolini and his fascists, they had Nazism before the Germans had in history. Right. And in Italian, you write the word nationalism, nazionalismo, with a Z in American, with a Z in English. So this is where the word Nazi comes from the Italian word written N-A-Z-I and the rest, nazionalismo. There's the word Nazi. And the Germans, they just took it over because Mussolini and the Nazis and his fascists, they were the first ones using this word Nazi. So it's as simple as that, etymologically. This word like National Zionism, it's complete disinformation. And these things I don't like, because they are lies, and with these lies, these Palestinians they bring into the world, we might forget the real enemy. And the real enemy is not a Zionist, which is just a local problem in Jerusalem. I mean, it doesn't touch anybody like in Northern Europe or anything. It's just a tiny little problem in Jerusalem, in the Middle East. And which is a very dangerous thing, that these blokes, these Palestinians and other fascio-Islamists, that they bring this into the world, because many people believe that, actually. Even many info warriors, who were really people who were looking for peace and to stop wars and all this. I met many info warriors who started to believe this, and it is completely wrong. And the danger is that we forget the real enemy, and the real enemy is Pharaoh's aristocracy, the Nazi Templars and their base Swaziland. And 10 years ago, this is very important. 10 years ago, they found out with a genetic analysis that more than 50% of the Europeans, they have pharaonic DNA in the blood. So 50% of the people have nothing, And the other 50%, they have sometimes 5 or 10 or 20% of pharaonic DNA in the blood, which is official. But of course, the media, they don't talk at all about it. So people are asking themselves, well, how is this possible? Egypt is over there, and this is Europe here. Well, it's very easy. You know, on the first night of a wedding, the lord in the castle, during the first rite, the jus prime noctis, they raped the women. So they injected their pharaonic genetics into the whole of our women, if you understand what I mean. And this is how Pharaoh's DNA came into so many European people. So this means that the aristocracy, the guys in the castles who have always been ruling in Europe and who still rule Europe, they come from Pharaoh. And this is why we don't have any castles in Europe before the year 1000. Now, 1 or 2 castles from the year 800, but they are very rare. The first stone builders were the aristocracy with their castles. And this is why we have all these names like Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and Larry Silverstein, and yeah, all the other Steins.
Because that means stone, right?
Yes, Stein, it means stone. They are the stone builders. And the stone builders has nothing to do with any Jews or anything. The Jews were living in tents like nomads. That has to do with the pharaohs. So this is a sign that the Erev Rav are here. So maybe now you want to explain who the Erev Rav are.
Well, according to the 5 books of Moses, they are, like you say, they are the enemy within, who doesn't mean for the well-being of the community at large. The community at large are just collateral damage to them that they can trade in, the lives that they can trade in for their own benefit. Like you talk about Switzerland and the wealth of the Jews that was plundered by Nazis and moved to Switzerland, the art and the wealth. A lot of the people who plundered the wealth of the Jews were, Erev Rav, the enemy within.
Yeah, absolutely.
In other words, they came from the Jewish community. And, colluders, like in any community. But we're not allowed, especially with identity politics, which I think is our downfall of everybody. But you're not allowed, and I'll tell you why, because none of us are allowed to call out the colluders amongst our people who mean for our demise. Because instead we have to embrace and defend them because they're the same color or culture as us. And that's what identity politics has done. It's made it impossible for us to see the enemy within and to name them. And that's like, okay, that's the first step towards getting on the train,
Well, actually, the Erev Rav are not from the Jewish people. They come from Pharaoh. And as Moses, with the Exodus, when he left Pharaoh in Egypt,
God told Moses, don't take them out with you, because they were the royalty also. They worked for royalty. And, they were the courtiers of, the courtier class of Pharaoh. And, so they had some pharaonic blood. And God told Moses, don't take them out. And Moses threw a big fit and said, but they have some of our blood and, they can change. He kept saying they can be redeemed. And God said, no, they cannot be redeemed. You can't redeem colluders, basically. And so Moses kept arguing, and God said, okay, have it your way and you'll see. Well, as soon as they got out in the story, as soon as they left Egypt and, they had, seen this miracle, the sea split and all that stuff, which a lot of people say, people who are deep thinkers say, oh, that was about splitting the atom, not splitting the Red Sea. But anyway, when they got to the other side, the first thing they did when Moses didn't come down from the mountain when they wanted him to, was they built the golden calf. And you know, they always take the steps that destroy the community. So, and that was Moses's fight all through the 40. It was also why it took him 40 years to get to the promised land, because he kept saying, give him another chance. So it's like when you keep coddling the worst among you, your whole tribe pays the price, but nobody but me seems to interpret it that way. But that is, in fact, what it says. And here we are
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So it all started with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh became Europe's aristocracy, building the castles and all the Steinsees and all that, and who split up with the Knights Templars. And I'm going to tell you that story now. Who are the Knights Templars? And out of the Knights Templars came the Freemasons, and they rule the entire world now. All presidents, all politicians. So who are the Knights Templars? Because this is very important to understand this in order to explain the Shoah and the Second World War and everything, and even the First World War. Well, in the aristocracy, there is a very important law, which is called the primogeniture, which means that only the firstborn son, he gets everything. He gets the land, he gets the power, he gets the castle, he gets the jus primae noctis, raping the women and all that. So, but of course, there were also second, third, and fourth sons, and sometimes up to 300, because of the jus primae noctis, raping the women. And so these second, third, and fourth sons, they were very angry, because they didn't get anything at all. So this is why there were always many conspiracies in the castles, like backstabbings and poisonings with aconite, aconitum, which is a flower, which is very poisonous. Mm-hmm. And so the firstborn son, the lord of the castle, he kicked them all out of the castle. But where do you go in the Middle Ages? Because in the Middle Ages, there were only three things: the people, the castle, and the church. So the castle fell. They couldn't stay there. An aristocrat is a parasite. He would never work a day in his life. So they wouldn't seek refuge amongst the people, because there you had to be up to your neck into the pig shit every day and work very hard. So the only thing left for a lord and a aristocrat were the monasteries, where at least he could sleep until noon, drink some wine, and talk with his friends and other aristocrats. And at a certain moment, there were so many of the second, third, fourth sons of the aristocracy in those monasteries that they said, we are in a monastery, which is a temple of God. So we are the Templars. And we're going to make a new system that every one of us in the aristocracy, and not only the firstborn son, but every one of us can be the king for a period of 4, 5, or 7 years. And we're going to vote. But then they said, but we cannot vote because we all know what's going on. And then a sly guy around the round table, he said, oh, I've got a good idea. Why don't we let the people vote? Because they're so stupid. They're never going to understand what's going on. And at the same time, we let the people know, we let the people think that they're ruling themselves. Then they're happy, those stupid people. And this new system, they called it the New World Order. And the New World Order is a horizontal rule. Whereas when there is a New World Order, logically, there must also be an old one. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a New World Order. So it would be very interesting to know what is the old world order then, to understand what the new one is. Well, the old world order is a vertical rule. So a feudal system with the king or the lord of the castle deciding to the last person in the empire without any intermediary. So the horizontal rule is called the republic, the republican system. And the old system is the royalist system. So there are still two groups of the elite, the royalists and the republicans. And actually, in America, you got Republicans and Democrats. And actually, the republic is where they do it, and the democracy is what they do, which is actually the same thing. So the New World Order, which was made by the Knights Templars already in 1291, which is the founding date of Switzerland, and this is why the Swiss, they always say, we are the oldest democracy in the world. They are the oldest New World Order in the world, Switzerland is. And the democracy, of course, is not for the people. The people never had any democracy, and they will never have any democracy. The democracy consists only in the fact that an aristocratic lord, he can have himself elected democratically back then and still today. So, and this is why the Swiss cross is a vertical rule, a vertical line interrupted by a horizontal line in the Knights Templars colors, red and white. And it's the only flag in the world which is a square. It's not long like the American flag or any other flag. It's a perfect square. And the square, of course, is a base of a pyramid. And the Freemasons, they call a square the concept of four, because a square and the base of a pyramid has four angles and four sides. So if you see the concept of four somewhere in a logo of an enterprise or something, an initiate, he sees the square, as in the square and compass. And the compass in the Freemason logo, square and compass, it stands at 60 degrees. And with 60 degrees, you can make a triangle which has three sides and three corners of 60, 60, and 60 degrees. And this is why they call the number 3, they call it this concept of 3. And this triangle is, of course, it's also the side of a pyramid. That's why the square and compass is so important for them, because these are the tools with which you can draw a pyramid. And if you see the concept of 3 and 4 in a logo, it means square and compass. And 3 and 4 together, it makes 7. That's why in the middle of it, they put the letter G, because the letter G is the 7th letter of the alphabet. Or in America, almost every president was a member of the Skull and Bones of the Yale University, the Skull and Bones Lodge. And Skull and Bones has in between the square and compass, it has the number 322. So 2 plus 2 is 4, the concept of 4, and 3 is 3. And altogether it's 7. It's the same thing. 3 to 2, it means the same thing as the letter G in between the square and compass. And Skull and Bones, of course, is the same thing as the Nazis had.
Why? But why? Because the pyramid is holy, or what? Why is everything always the pyramid?
The number 7 is the holy number for the pyramid for them, yes, for the Freemasons and the pharaohs.
But what is the pyramid about?
I find in a lot of, because I studied Demotic language at university, and Demotic is the written pharaonic language, whereas the hieroglyphs are only for the temples, so the demons and the gods, their gods, can see a picture. Apparently they can't read. I don't know how that works. So they had a written language, which during the Egyptian campaign of Napoleon, there was a French guy with him, an academic. His name was Jean-Paul Champollion. And Jean-Paul Champollion, they found how do you call it? This thing of the stone of Rosetta. And the stone of Rosetta had 3 languages carved into it: the hieroglyphics, Greek, and Demotic language. So this is how for about 95% they could translate the Demotic language. And what was your question again? I forgot it.
What's up with the pyramid? Why is that so? Why is that the base of everything? Why is that like such a potent symbol?
Oh yes, oh yeah, now I remember. So I studied the Demotic language, which the French they translated this, and I find in a lot of words I find um, words with the pyramid in Demotic related to the fact that the soul comes into the pyramid. Like the Knights Templars, they had this thing called the Baphomet, which has to
Yeah.
be pronounced Baphomet because the Knights Templars they spoke French and not English. So the
Hmm.
T at the end of Baphomet, it's not being pronounced in French, so you say Baphomet. And Ba in the Pharaonic Demotic language is the everlasting soul, the Ba, and the Ka is the soul when you're alive. And Fa in Ba Fa Me, it means to arrive, and Me, Mer or Meru, it's the word for the pyramid. So the word Baphomet, it means the soul arrives in the pyramid. So apparently this is why, and I find it in many, many, many words I translated out of the Pharaonic language into English, which I explain in my videos. It's all related to the soul arriving into the pyramid. So this is the answer to your question, that this
Why
is
is
why the
that?
pyramid.
Because is that why it's a tomb, the pyramid? Because your soul goes to rest there, or you don't know?
Apparently, as they are sun worshippers,
Uh huh.
maybe I don't know. I'm just a historian. I don't know anything about aliens or something. But the words are leading me to the fact that they are not from here. And it's
Yeah.
as they were sun worshippers, and they still are, Amun Ra and all this. I find a lot
Yeah.
of words indicating that they come out of the sun or from the solar system somewhere, another part, and they come here on Earth into the pyramid, being like teleported, or I don't know why, how, and I can't tell you because here my knowledge stops. I can only
Yeah.
find it like etymologically. I can find it back in the Pharaonic language that there is a connection with the soul arriving into the pyramid, and it's coming from a place not from Earth.
Well, a lot of the, yeah, I always wonder about that because maybe they're not human. A lot of people are talking about that now. Maybe the people in control, I don't know if they're robots or clones or what, but maybe they're not human because they do things that humans would never do, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I lived in Switzerland for 20 years. I mean, I've never seen a people so cold and so heartless as the Swiss. And they really are the base of Pharaoh, just as Pharaoh and the aristocracy. I mean, they are cold. The way they talk, they are cold-hearted. They've always been cold-hearted. And actually, the white race, the white European race, is the most terrorized race, well, together with the Jews probably, on earth. We have been terrorized just like the Jews already by the Romans, who did a genocide on the Celtic people, which is probably the
Right.
biggest genocide the world has ever seen. And this is why the Jews were a lot smarter. They said, well, we're not going to stay here in Jerusalem. Let's hit the road, people. Let's go into the diaspora because we don't want to get killed by the Romans. This is the main reason of the diaspora. I mean, a rabbi can say a lot of things about God this and God that they were dispersed into the world. But this is not the reason, the historical reason that the
Well,
Jews going
also
into the
that
diaspora.
also our history. Well, also Jewish history teaches us that we were carried off as slaves to, and we were carried off to Rome. The women were carried off to Rome as slaves, and that's like
That's
that's the Arch of Titus in Rome that you have to pass under. It is them bringing slaves and men too, Jewish slaves, just like they did to Africa.
that's
So
true, yeah.
yeah. And they brought
It's the
him to
same with
Venice first.
It's the same with the black slaves, you know.
Yes, it's exactly
Black
the
people
same.
are always blaming the white man for it, but it was not the white man. It was the aristocracy doing it. And it was already the African aristocracy tying their own putting them in chains in Africa, their own people, because the African aristocracy, they're also pharaohs, and they sold them to the Knights Templars, who had an enormous fleet. They always had, and they still have. I mean, to bring all these people into Jerusalem and all this, and
So
they were the fleet owners.
it's pretty much a big what do you call it? It's a big switch to get people to think that there are the owners of the world are all kind of related, and they're royals, and they just look at the rest of us as if we're just collateral damage, and we're food, I guess. You know, like that movie Soylent Green. Soylent Green is people. It's like we're, you know, I read this thing that, well, I mean, it's just too horrific to even go into, but, you know, we're just a resource like oil or something else that comes out of the ground to them. And to get people to switch into that paradigm is quite a task, isn't it? To go beyond their skin color and their culture, to go, oh, we are all in the same boat, and we are all prey of the predators who own this world.
Yes, we're just a commodity like oil, as you say so, yeah, absolutely. Now with the corona and all this, the corona lie, they're going to come with the vaccination and mandatory, and they're going to make the perfect sterile and slave out of us, you know, the commodity slave. And
what can we do? Do we have any way to change things, in your opinion? Do we have any way to be free, in your opinion?
Well, to my opinion, the only ones who can set us free and who can fight are the Germanic tribes. They did it once. That's the only people on the entire earth who destroyed Rome in 400, and Rome was led by Pharaoh in 455. They're the only ones that can do it. And it's really stirring up in Berlin, in Europe. It's really stirring up.
Yeah, I see all those videos. I see all the videos of the people in the streets over there.
I mean, when the Romans came in Europe, or when the Romans came towards the Jewish tribes, there was Masada, a terrible massacre. And the Jews
Masada
fled.
was just the end of it. No, I have to tell you this because you don't know. But Masada was the end of, it was many decades, and I can't remember how many, but the first revolt against Rome was called the Bar Kokhba. Bar Kokhba, I send you stuff about this all the time. The Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome, which is the background for the whole history of Jesus, which no Christians know, and no Jews know it either. But the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome was in the time of the destruction of the Second Temple there in Jerusalem, and the Jews, actually it was the second part of a revolt against Rome. The first one, they won, the Maccabees won the first one, and it continued for, you know, a couple hundred years and ended at Masada. But it was a revolt against all powers, I guess all royal powers that were occupying the Jewish people. But it was won during the revolt for however brief a time. So we had a big victory against Rome, and we also had another victory against Rome in the story of Esther, because she married into Rome because her husband was Xerxes or Ahasuerus. But Esther was married to the vicar, whatever, of Rome. And so she got him to overturn a whole edict and reverse it. So the Jewish people had 3 victories over Rome. And still it continues. Yeah. Here we are today.
Yeah, that was the same story like the Celtic peoples, they
Uh-huh.
they also brought brought away the first victories. But Celts, if you look at the Irish, in Brittany, or the Celts, after the first victories, they took out all the cider and they celebrated. They thought, oh, we beat the Romans. But the Romans, they came back and they murdered everybody, women, children, big genocide. But then they came, so probably the same thing as, fighting, the Jews were fighting against the Romans. When the Jews, or the Hebrews, they won the first few battles with the Sicarii. The Sicarii, they were the Jewish freedom fighters, really good fighters. And when they won, they underestimated the enemy, and they said,
Right.
"Oh, we won the enemy! Oh, let's
Right.
celebrate! It's peace now!" And
Uh-huh.
but then the Romans, after the Jews and the Celts, they came upon the German tribes, and that was a completely different story, because
Right.
these people were living in snow in the forest. They didn't even have any cider to celebrate. They were hunting men and all that, so they only had war. So they had nothing to celebrate. So they chased the Romans back to Rome, and they completely destroyed. And that's the only people on the entire earth that managed to defeat Pharaoh and to defeat the empire.
So you
So
think they're going to do it again?
I hope so.
Or you think there's a hope that they can do it again?
They're capable of it. Yeah. This summer there came some German nationalists. They came to interview me, who are not anymore nationalists in the sense that they hate other people, which they were before. But I've shown them that the enemy within is Pharaoh and the Nazi Templars, and they're based Switzerland. So they came all the way from Berlin to interview me. They had really professional gear with them, 3 professional big cameras and all that, and really good guys. And now that the German people are waking up and they are knowing who the real enemy is, I think there is a possibility they're going to stand up, and I hope so. At least I'm working on it, and I'm turning them around, so our masters can't use them anymore to hurt us. So hopefully they're going to bite their masters, because the only weapon we have at the moment is information, because most
That is
people,
the
they don't
weapon,
know.
though. That is the weapon, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. In German, yeah. Yeah, it's the only weapon we have, yeah. And so, like, if you look at the history of the Crusades, which is very important to understand it all, the Knights Templars in Switzerland, the last crusade and the last stronghold of the Knights Templars was Acres, Saint-Jean d'Acre in French. And Acres
Mm-hmm.
lies in the north of Israel now, at the Lebanese border.
Right.
The
Right.
castle of Acres. And Acres fell on May 18th, 1291. That was the end of the Crusades. So only 2.5 months later, just the time to come back, they founded Switzerland on August the 1st, which is a national holiday, 1291. So, of course, and if you look at the Swiss flag, red and white, of course, the notorious Templars treasure came into Switzerland, with which they founded the Swiss banks. So the bankers are not the Jews, as so many people say so. The first bankers who invented the banks, who invented the check, who were the first multinationals, they were the Knights Templars. And they are aristocrats from Pharaoh. And only 16 years after they founded Switzerland in 1291, the French king, Philip the Fair, Philip II of France, he arrested all the Knights Templars on that famous, notorious Friday the 13th. That's why we say
Right.
so.
Right.
And that was Friday the 13th of October in 1307, which is only 16 years after the Knights Templars already founded Switzerland. So this is why the French king, he only got arrested 325 Knights Templars, but tens of thousands, they went to Switzerland. And then 7 years later, the French king, in front of Le Notre Dame, which is that church that burned in Paris, in front of it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that too. Yeah. What were you going to say?
Only 20 or 30 Templars were burned, like Jacques de Molay. He was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templars. And so last year, I think it was April 16th, if I recall that right, or April 15, no, April 15, I think. That French cathedral, Le Notre Dame, it burned. And so, as I know, who got burned at that same place as well? The Knights Templars. So I knew immediately it was an arson. It was not an accident. And I've been talking with people here in France who do renovating of antiques and all this and old buildings, and they told me the wood is like 1,000 years old. It's like concrete. It can never burn. Even if you put a processor on it and some a liquid that it might burn faster, you can never make it burn. It's impossible. And so burn the Notre Dame, burning the Knights Templars at exactly the same spot. So there is a connection. And so I just had to look at the date, April 15th. So what happened in history, April 15th?
Well, that's tax day here.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that's related to the Knights Templars tax day, because they are the tax drivers. Because who invented the taxes? Well, that's the aristocracy and Pharaoh. They said, you know, in the castle, they said to the people, well, we're going to have a party for the next 2 weeks. There's a big marriage and we need pig's meat and bread and wine and your older women to clean up and your younger ones for dancing and the rest. And they invented taxes. And now taxes are being collected by the Freemasons and the Templars. So there's, yeah, April 15th. Interesting. But anyway, what happened April 15th in history? The biggest enemy, the man whom they hated the most, he died on April the 15th.
Who's
in Paris. Yeah, that was Guillaume de Nogaret. And Guillaume de Nogaret, he was the prosecutor of the king. And he prosecuted the Knights Templars. He was the state's attorney, if you wish. And so he was the most hated man. So at the same moment that the Notre Dame burned, and at the same place where those Templars got burned, so it's 100% sure that it was an arson, and it was a reminder, and like it was not an accident that it burned. So all the initiated ones in the entire world, they knew this was a reminder and probably a beginning of something new. And this something new is probably the corona, which happened right afterwards, because the entire world saw the burning of Le Notre Dame and all the initiated ones in the world, just as they put so many secret messages in Hollywood videos, as we all know now, like 9/11 has been announced in so many films before, and many other things as well, and all this child molesting stuff going on as well. And coming to child molesting, actually the island of St. James, where Mr. Epstein, the stone builders, the pharaohs, where he was, it belonged to the Knights Templars. It belongs to the Hospitallers. Right next to it is the island of Saint Croix, the Holy Cross. All these islands there, they belong to the Knights Templars. who already were in the Americas before Columbus. There are many Knights Templars artifacts who were found in the which were found in the United States. Even a tower, an octagonal tower of octagon from before Columbus has been found in the United States. It's still there, but of course they don't talk about it. You just punch it into the internet and you can see it. And it's octagonal because octagon is the top of the Nazi Templars. It's the most dangerous organization in the world which still exists. Octagon. So this is why many police badges and all that, they're all octagonal. And so watch my video, Octagon, the Empire of Darkness. And why octagon? Because if you look at the Templars cross or a Swiss cross and you draw a line around it, where you get an octagonal form. And so on top of the Nazis, where all the occultism comes from. So this is why actually the occultism of the Nazis, it doesn't come from the German people. Neither does the hate towards the Jewish people. It all comes out of the Knights Templars. And it all comes out of Pharaoh. Because all this voodoo stuff and all this wizard stuff and the druids in Europe and the voodoo in Africa, it all comes from Pharaoh. It doesn't come from European people. It doesn't even come from the African people. Well, now it does come from the African people, the voodoo stuff, but it all comes from Pharaoh originally. Just like the Erev Rav, who were Pharaoh's wizards. And Moses said, I'm going to take them. And God said, no, don't do it. They're evil people. It's the base of it all, Pharaoh.
They have a religion that's survived for a really long time, the Luciferians, right? That has survived from Babylon. And before, actually. You know, I mean, some people say it's the line of Cain, you know, that goes back to the snake in the Garden of Eden. I mean, some people are saying that, and they've been saying that say that they aren't human like us, that they might have come from another place. They have names for it. But human beings, I mean, I wonder if people at the top of the pyramid, because I think it's a Ponzi scheme, what the pyramid represents. A huge base of people and then just a few at the top. I think that's what it represents. But they don't do anything that real human beings do. And they don't care about things that real human beings care about. They're simply not human. They've evolved out of the human race or something. They've evolved themselves out, or maybe they never were, but I don't know. People are going to have to think about that. You give us all great things to think about. You've given me great things to think about in all the years I've watched your videos. You are a unique and brilliant mind, and whether I agree with you or not, and I do agree with you on most things, what a unique and incredible perspective you bring to all of us who think. And I'm always fascinated to talk with you. And I'm so happy that you were here with me today. And I hope people watch it and it sparks some kind of thinking in them and kind of blows up the barricades that have been put in there by people who don't mean well for the children of this world.
Yeah, like coming back to Babylon, you just mentioned Babylon, and the lamestream historians, lamestream, not mainstream, but lamestream, they all say that Babylon and Mesopotamia, that was before Egypt, but it's not true. It already says in the Bible and Torah that the pharaohs are the oldest people on the earth from history. And I find many words already like Mesopotamia. Me is the word for pyramid. And there are many, many other words that are indicating that in that language in Babylonia and Mesopotamia, there are demotic pharaonic words. There's so many. And already even also, if you look at the ruler, one of the kings of Babylon and Mesopotamia was Nebuchadnezzar. And it is Nebuchadnezzar. And Sar, in the pharaonic demotic language, it means the king, like in a sarcophagus, which is a box to put the king in when he's dead. Or like Caesar, he was the king of Rome, and he was married with Cleopatra, so he was automatically the king, the pharaoh of Egypt. He is on the list of pharaohs. Many Roman emperors are on the list of pharaohs. And then the other Tsars was also Tsar. There was the French king or president Sarkozy, the president of France. And even Prince Charles or the king of Saudi Arabia or all these aristocrats, their official title is Tsar, which is an abbreviation out of the French language for Son Altesse Royale, which means His Royal Highness. Because they all know where they come from, and they really wanted it to end up in S-A-R, Sar. The word sire also comes from Sar. So if you look at the former president of France, Sarkozy, a definite pharaoh, many people say, or like the anti-Semites and all that, they say, oh, look, there's another Jew having all the power. There's another president, he's a Jew. And, well, he is a Jew by his mother's side. Sarkozy, his mother is called André Mala. She is a Jewess from Thessaloniki in Greece. So this is the Judaic law. The mother is a Jew, so the boy is a little boy. But it's not that simple, because from his father's side, he's from a line of Hungarian kings. He even had a coat of arms with 2 lions. So my question to you all is, what is he before? Is he a Jew before, from his mother's side, or is he an aristocrat before, from his royal line of kings from his father's side? And the Jews also have kings like King Solomon or King David. And of course, a Jewish king, he is a king before he is a Jew. And a king, a Jewish king, he is also a pharaoh, because the entire aristocracy in the entire world, they're all pharaohs. So this is why Sarkozy, of course,
yeah, I
he's
told
a pharaoh.
You that my family,
and
I told you my family name is David, and I consider myself to be, you know, well, I don't consider myself, but, you know, my tribe considers itself House of David and Tribe of David, which is, you know, I guess it's royal, you know, as far as King David. But I take that on a spiritual level rather than a physical level, you know.
yeah, the physical level, you get the physical level of it the moment you get initiated. And I think they don't want to go and initiate you, Roseanne, after all.
No, they don't.
You're too
You know,
good-hearted.
my friend said they're never going to let you in because they know that the first thing you would do is start praying for them, and they can't have that.
Yeah, it's
But I do pray for people who are hoodwinked and bamboozled, that they could, you know, get the truth and come back to the human beings.
Yeah. And considering the Second World War, well, I found a very rare picture of Mr. Hitler being in Zurich in 1923, where he got financed by the Swiss general, as I told you before.
I saw that picture. It's in your videos.
Yeah. And so even most of the Nazi war criminals, they're either Swiss or ethnic Swiss. Even the head of the SS Einsatzgruppen, who after the wave of Luftwaffe and army and Wehrmacht and the German Air Force against Operation Barbarossa against the Russians in 1941, there was a wave of mass murderers killing mostly Jews then, and they were called the SS Einsatzgruppen. And at the head of the SS Einsatzgruppen was a Swiss colonel. In the SS, they didn't use the word colonel. He was a SS Standartenführer. And he was born in Schaffhausen in Switzerland, a Swiss. And as a real Swiss banker, as they're funny people, those Swiss, he wrote it all down like a banker. All the people and all those little children they murdered manually, like in Babi Yar, and in a sand pit, and just buried them alive and all that. He wrote it all down. And here we get this cold, sort of creepy people who have absolutely no emotions. I mean, how can you do this, you know? And so typically Swiss and so typically pharaonic and aristocratic. And this list, what he wrote down, this SS Standartenführer Karl Jäger from Switzerland, the head of the SS Einsatzgruppen, has become the horrendous Jäger list, in which he wrote down how they murdered manually 400,000 people. Manually. This was the Shoah with a bullet, they call it. And even in Auschwitz, the commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Höss, he was an ethnic Swiss, and he was even speaking Swiss German in Auschwitz. Himmler, he was also an ethnic Swiss, which I'll explain you after what an ethnic Swiss is.
Right.
The German health minister in the Third Reich, the Nazi health minister, he was a Swiss. He was born in Switzerland. His name was Dr. Leonardo Conti. He was an SS Obergruppenführer, which is an SS general. And his nickname was the Swiss sadist, because he made the new laws that you could make, you could do medical experiments on humans, which the Nazis further did during the war on 500,000 people. I think it was called Operation T4, Tiergarten 4. And they were all Swiss. Even the first extermination camp was Sobibor, and the commandant of Sobibor was Christian Wirth. They called him Christian the Terrible. He was also an ethnic Swiss. The Swiss even had concentration camps in the US during the Civil War. There was a Swiss captain, he was Captain Wirtz, W-I-R-Z. He had a concentration camp of the Confederates murdering and starving to death, just like a Nazi concentration camp, many American soldiers. It's a typical Swiss thing, you know, these concentration camps and all this. The Swiss even had 3 concentration camps for American pilots during the Second World War. The names were Vaux-Villarmoz, Les Diablerets, and Hunneberg, where American pilots who were shot down over Switzerland or who were shot down over Germany, and they tried to fly over neutral, not very neutral Switzerland, and they were put in a concentration camp where they got murdered and tortured. And I made a video about it called Swiss Internees. There's also a website, Swiss Internees. It's all Swiss-led, people. It's all Swiss-led. So what is an ethnic Swiss? During the 30-year war, it was a religious war by the Catholics attacking the Protestants, because the Catholics were using the Pope and all that. He was using all its power over Northern Europe because of Protestantism. And so they needed to wipe them out, and they founded a organization called the Jesuits, and they were assigned to do the job, and which they never managed to do. And I forgot what I wanted to say. Where
You were
was I
talking
before?
about the ethnic Swiss. You were going to
The
define
what?
ethnic Swiss.
Oh yeah, the ethnic
Ethnic
Swiss.
Swiss.
I'm a bit absent-minded, you know. I've got so many things in my head, you know. And yeah, the ethnic Swiss. So during this war, hundreds of thousands of Swiss mercenaries, they murdered about 20 million Germans, two-thirds of the German population, and who got actually saved by the Dutch and their fleet, because the Dutch fleet at this time, they were very powerful, and they sank all the Portuguese and Spanish armadas with the gold from the Inca gold and the Maya gold, with which the mercenaries were paid. So they couldn't get paid anymore, and that was the end of the 30-year war, which was probably the worst war Europe has ever seen. Especially because so many people starved. 20 million Germans died. There was a real genocide on the German people, and made by the Swiss mercenaries, of course, under Templars' command, who led the country since 1291.
How come
So
they don't like the German people, the Swiss overlords? Why do they hate the Germans so bad?
they do actually. I met many Germans living in Switzerland, and they didn't have any Swiss friends. They were completely outcasted in Switzerland. Because there's so much Pharaonic and Templar blood in Switzerland.
Oh, they just
Um,
hate everyone who's not them.
they do, yeah, yeah, they do. It's horrible,
Do
yeah.
you think that
Even if you're white,
when you do you say that you're talking about, you think that the European men will rise up and get rid of the overlords, but do you think that they might sense that, the overlords, they might sense that about the Germanic people?
oh yes, and the internet. That's why they came up with the Corona lie now. So they're gonna attack us by a different way before it's too late. Because if we're gonna wait and they're not gonna do anything, we're gonna take over control. So they have to intervene. The Corona is just a political and military intervention. That's all. That's all that it is. It's a complete lie. And so the ethnic Swiss, so many, 20 million
I'm glad
Germans
I'm
died.
old. I'm so glad I'm old and I'm going to die my way out of this shit. But I feel sorry for the young people, the world I'm leaving behind. I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, we old people, we have more experience and we have more knowledge. And I mean, our lives are done. I mean, we lived the good parts of it. So we should
Yeah.
be there to make the first sacrifice and take up the arms, and instead of our young ones doing it. Because in all these dumb wars, we had it the other way around. There were
Yeah.
17-year-old kids doing the war, and they left behind the parents who were too old to make any more kids. And this is
Yeah.
not the natural way. The natural way is that the parents, they defend the little ones. So this is what we should do. We, the older
Well, that's what
people,
we're
we should.
trying to do. We're
Oh
trying to
yeah,
wake them up.
yeah.
But,
But we should take the first step and take up arms and go and visit the bastards and do something before it's too late. We shouldn't let the young ones do it and wait until they do it. I mean, I'm 58. You know,
I think we fight up here.
so if there are any
I think
warriors
that's more
listening,
effective than weapons.
if there are any warriors listening, please team up with me. My email address is in my channels, and Jake will leave it here in the description probably. Please contact me, and we set up a good fight. Maybe do something, because
Well, you're definitely the
I've done
brains.
I've done a lot of videos. I gave you the information, but now is the time to stand
We're
up.
going to post it too. Now we're going to end because you're tired and I'm tired. We've given people a whole bunch to think about, and we'll put it in the description of how to contact you. And again, Thank you for giving me so much to think about, and to read about, to research for myself. I worry about Americans that think they're woke, that aren't, you know.
Well, too bad, Roseanne. I'm just warming up. I can just talk
Oh,
for
you're
another
just
few
warming
hours.
up. Oh my God. Well, let's do it again when I have a mind, because I'm tired. I woke up so early today, and
Well, you
yeah,
are tired. Well, we
you're.
started. It must be like 1 o'clock where you are, but for me, it's
Let's
like
see.
one
Yeah, it's
o'clock in the
1 o'clock.
night here, or I'm in the middle
Yeah.
of the night here.
Well, do you want to do it again?
Yeah, sure, Roseanne. If I have a place, I mean, I was lucky now to have this, to be able to do it, and
Well, do you
the
want to
moment I,
tell me? Do you want to give advice to people? What what? Tell me the best thing that could happen.
well, the best thing that could happen is that we all get this this information around, that at least we know who the real enemy is. And with this, we can avoid that we kill each other in this divide and rule strategy of the enemy within. Like the black race against the white race, the Jews against the Nazis, or the Nazis against the Jews, and the Romans and the French against the English, and it won't never stop. And now the Muslims and all that. We must all team up, people, all the races, all the people, all the religions, or everybody team up. The Jews, the Germans, the Arabs, everybody team up and get rid of this horrible enemy within. And anybody who wants to fight each other afterwards, well, we can still do it afterwards, but we mustn't do it before. We must get rid of the enemy within before, and then we can hit each other again, if anybody who likes that. But we must all team up against the enemy within, for our children, before it's too late.
Well, the enemy within that owns everything. Um, they do prey on children, don't they?
Oh, yes, they do, yeah.
And we're not supposed to know that, are we?
Yeah. Well, I visited the Mother of Darkness castle. It was quite dangerous, where Dutroux, this child kidnapper, many children disappearing, just like, and there was another one and he brought the children into a Belgian castle, Le Château des Amérois, the castle of Amérois, which is the Mother of Darkness castle. And I went there. It was very dangerous. I found in the middle of a huge forest in the Ardennes, I found electric cables in the forest around the castle, that would trigger an alarm. I was really wet. It had been raining the whole day. I had been walking for 8 hours to get there through the forest. And then I visited also another castle, Le Château de Sautou, the castle of Sautou, where another one of these guys called Fourniret, where they did rituals with children. And of course, all these guys, they're all Freemasons. This is what Freemasons do. And like the Jeffrey Epstein case. And this is all related with a thing called the embryonic cells, or stem cells. And the stem cells, they were invented by an American, or discovered in 1989. And right after 1989 or 1998, I don't remember. No, it was 1989. Right after that, all children started disappearing in Europe. Dutroux, Fourniret. Since this embryonic cells got discovered. And what do they do? And this is the Jeffrey Epstein, again another Stein. And there is also the castle of Epstein, which has nothing to do with any Jews or anything. It's all the aristocracy, the castle of Epstein. It all has to do with the youth elixir, because they found out through the embryonic cells that a fetus in the womb of 3 months old, at 3 months, it has the highest growth potential of the entire existence of a human life. 3 months has the highest growing rates of a cell, of a human cell. So what did they do? And this is why they say they accepted in law that you can do an abortion at 12 weeks. And 12 weeks is exactly 3 months, which is, so that gives them the possibility to harvest the embryonic cells from a woman. And this was happening with the Epstein and all these children disappearing. So a billionaire, you know, who had been, you know, who is an old guy, maybe 70, and he'd been drinking quite some bottles of wine. So maybe he got a liver cancer. So what do? They draw with an injection needle out of the fetus the 3 months old youth elixir cells out of the fetus, and they re-inject that into their liver. And this really cures the liver cancer. But they also found out in a general way, if they inject these blood cells, 3 months old, into their system, it has a rejuvenating effect of about 30 years. And this is why Mr. Trump, I think he's 73 years old, he married that woman who could be his granddaughter, who's only 20 years younger, and he's acting like a young man, just like Berlusconi and like Hillary Clinton, because they all inject themselves this rejuvenating cells, and which gives also a really sexual stimulating effect. And this is how an old man like Mr. Trump can please a young girl who was 20 years old at the time. They all take it.
Well, you know that I like Trump, and I can't believe that you don't like Trump, but you don't.
Well, there are pictures. You see him together with Mr. Epstein, and
but he testified against Epstein. He's the only one who did, and he likes.
The lie is their biggest weapon, you know.
I know, but I like Trump.
Oh, I like him too.
I think he's the only one who fights against all this stuff.
I like him too. He's very charming. He's very witty, and he's got a great sense of humor. I really enjoy watching him. And this is
well. What about all this peace he's making in the world? What do you think of that? You're not gonna.
I mean, listen, Roseanne. I met many people in my life, and I met very unfriendly people, very not friendly at all, but they were good people. But I also met very friendly people, you know, like in Switzerland, you know, or very friendly, saying, "Well, go and take a shower, please," you know, like in Auschwitz. But they were very evil people. So it's very dangerous, you know, to make a picture out of somebody by saying on a basis of if it's a nice person or not a nice person. It will lead you to the grave or to Auschwitz, you know. This is what the Nazis did. They camouflaged it so good, you know, like they even told the Jews that they could take their suitcases with them. They even let Jews write, you know, postcards to their family members in Greece and Italy saying that, you know, it's good here. We are only working. We're going to survive. Nothing wrong. You know,
well,
just like Trump and all these actors, they're just acting. The lie is their first and biggest weapon. I mean, wake up, come on, wake up, wake up. The same thing they did in Auschwitz. Nice talking, you know, and saying, "Oh, go and take a shower."
You don't think that Trump is on to the trail of these people who traffic children and wants to stop it? Because that's what a lot of us think.
Well, the first thing he should do is liberate Julian Assange, but he doesn't do that, does he?
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, he doesn't say a word about it. And I know this Iranian general because I gave radio interviews like 15 years ago on the Iranian radio, or no, it was 10 years ago maybe, the IRIB radio, IRIB, the national radio of Iran. And I happen to know, I still have some contacts over there, and I happen to know the reason why Trump droned Mr. Soleimani. Because what happened? You always have to know when something happens, like the thing that Trump droned Mr. Soleimani, what happened before and what happened afterwards, to understand why did it happen. Well, what happened before? Just a couple of weeks before, there were big protests in Iran.
Well, there always has been. There has been since the...
Yeah, but this time, the Ayatollah and the whole ecclesiastical Iranian Nazis, they ordered to shoot at the people by the Republican Guard. And as Soleimani, he loved, and 1,500 people died at least, even pregnant women and a lot of young students. They just whacked them. They just shot them. But Mr. Soleimani, as he is a big hero in his country, even a bigger hero than this Nazi Ayatollah with their ecclesiastical fascist system against the people, he was even a bigger hero than those blokes. So, and he loved his people, Soleimani, so he was really shocked. So what did Soleimani, Trump said Soleimani is dangerous because he was preparing a terrorist act. Well, the terrorist act he was preparing, and I know this for 100% sure, I got it firsthand, the terrorist act he was preparing was doing a coup in Iran, because he had his this big army with which he was fighting the Islamic State, and he was going to turn it against those ones who were killing his beloved people. And so as this man was too strong in the empire, they couldn't stop him. So all these Freemasons,
I don't know about that, because we hear that he was on his way he was in Iraq. That's what we hear. And that I mean, the Democrat Party was all up in arms that they killed him, and they liked the Iran deal. So I don't know if that makes any sense to me, what you're saying. They like the deal that set upon the Iranian people.
So the Freemasons in Iran, they contacted the Freemason, Mr. Trump, and all the other Freemasons in the US who pull all the strings, and they said, go whack him. That's what happened. And against the people. The Iranian people are okay, just like the Israeli people are okay. But the same problem, the problem is all these pharaohs. Iran is being led by all these pharaohs, and they put in place a ecclesiastical system because some people wanted it. We're all being led by these pharaohs, and we should...
Well, that is the bottom line, but I'm going to have to do a lot. That is the bottom line, that they set upon their own people, all of them, the owners. But I'm going to have to do some more reading on that, because I don't know if I agree with you on that. But I got to read
Soleimani,
more.
He wanted to do a putsch, a military coup, and save his people. That's what he wanted to do. And Mr. Trump, he lied and he stopped him.
Well, I'm not sure, but I appreciate what you're saying. Okay, well, I'm going to have to read more.
I made a video about it. Didn't you see that video I made about it?
I don't think I did.
It's on my channel, Homeland Security.
I'll have to watch that one. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be fooled in any way. I don't want to be led or fooled, But, none of us do. But it's hard to know. It's hard to figure out.
Well, the lie
That's
is
why
the
I talk
first
to
weapon.
a lot of people. I know. I talk to a lot of people, and then I try to do research myself and try to come to my own conclusions. I think that's you know, research and making your own conclusion. But, you know, I never stop researching. I'm never satisfied till I get to what I consider to be the root of it, and it's all evil and horrible.
You know, I like Mr. Trump. You know, I really like him the way he's an amazing person. But I mean, liking someone is not a criteria for being a good person. It might lead you to hell. I've been in situations in my life that really know. Being in the army, I was in a special detachment.
Well, if we have no choice, if what you're saying is that if we have no choice and both of them are shit, what are we going to do? If we don't have any choice between good or bad, or we have to choose a lesser, like my boyfriend calls it, the lasso of two evils. You know, if there's just two evils, what in the hell are we going to do? Just die?
Well, they're all liars. All these politicians are liars. There's no lesser evil or more evil. They're all the same. So we should rid the whole once and for all. And I've been in moments in my life I really had to know, you know, can I trust this person or not? And the worst criteria, you know, to make a picture of someone is by the criteria of liking someone or not. This will lead you into your grave the quickest way. And
I just tell everybody that they need to.
He's a very likable person. He really speaks out and very likable. But yeah.
Well, what do you say about him bringing peace and stopping so many wars?
He lies.
You don't
They're
think
all
he's
lies.
doing that?
No, of course not. He killed Soleimani. Soleimani would have brought peace. He would have even brought peace in the whole Middle East.
Well, Trump just announced that there is peace deals all through the Middle East. What do you think of those?
All these deals are being made by Pharaoh, not by the people, being made by politicians. So of course, there's something shady, you know, waiting for us behind it.
Well, that seems to be the history of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
We should just stop believing them once and for all. Everything is a lie.
Oh boy, I gotta go to sleep. You're giving me too much to think about. Oh God. Oh God, Sean.
Yeah. Well, it was great, Roseanne. I'm so glad we finally did it, and maybe the occasion will present itself so we can do it again.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to sleep as well. It's what is it?
All right. Well, you stay in touch with me. And
oh yes, I will.
Stay strong. You know, we'll put your stuff. And now I have a big old fucking headache thinking too much about things you've said.
Yeah. And
thank you for being here.
Thank you, Roseanne, and thank you for being my friend.
Thank you for being my friend.